Hi, everybody. This is Dr. Ed Park from Recharge Biomedical, and today we're doing a webinar entitled In Case You Missed It. What we see in the picture here is a artist rendering of the Library of Alexandria. I spent many years writing a screenplay about one of my heroes, Hypatia, who was a philosopher, and I'm always reminded of how much was lost there. Who knows whether my musings will ever be archived or lost, but in case you missed it, they're available for reference, and I'll show you how to save them later. The use of exosomes has not been FDA approved, of course, for the treatment or prevention of any disease. This lecture is not for advertisement. It is for educational purposes only. And anecdotes presented are not rigorous scientific proof, although they are a form of evidence. And so, as with anything, due diligence is important. The goals of the talk will be to talk about how I learned about exosomes and discuss my journey in chronological order. We'll talk about the foundational lectures that I recorded. We'll talk about the Hawaiian lectures I did to live audiences, the review of blogs that I've done, the live webinars in Hawaii. And the reason I do this is because the typical open rates for my newsletter, I mean, I hate to spam people. I'm just trying to limit it to twice a week. But, you know, people get annoyed. I get annoyed. I unsubscribe to things that I was once interested in. And I realized that only about 15% of people open the email and only about 1% click on it. So there's a lot of stuff you may have missed. If you're on a Mac, the way to do a screenshot is Command-Shift-3. 4 will take the entire screen. 3, you can click and drag the part that I'll show you to click and drag upon. And you could save it for future reference. If you're on a PC, the Windows button, the Mac is that little flower, that's the Command-Shift-3, and then it'll darken and you can click and drag. It'll save to a PNG on your desktop. In the Windows, it's Windows button, Shift and S. Again, it'll darken and you can click and drag, but you need to paste that to an open file such as WordPad or Microsoft Word. Just to recap, for those that don't know, exosomes are not cells. They're about 1/300th the diameter. They're teeny tiny. They're how cells communicate. We did not know this before, but now we're discovering it. This is a lot of how cells communicate with each other. They're 100 nanometers in diameter, same diameter as a coronavirus. And they are not cells. They don't have their own machinery, nuclei, protein-producing machinery, packaging. They are the packages themselves, and they're often labeled with these CD63, 9, and 81 markers. The ones that we use, the mesenchymal stem cells, don't have self-antigens, so they are not recognized as foreign or friendly. Again, if you're more interested in the science of it, go back to last week's lecture. This is a borrowed slide from that lecture, and it shows the apocryphal story that Columbus's ships were not seen. They were invisible because no one knew what they were looking at. I think that's not true, but it brings up an important point, which is that prior to 2008, no one was looking at exosomes. They had developed protein assays for biological markers, largely using actually antibodies in most cases. And they could see things on a cellular level, but as John Wenger pointed out last week, the ability to optically see things on a smaller scale was not really there until we had these super optic microscopes. What we do know is that we used to measure the proteins in your blood. Perhaps the lion's share of activity was not through loose proteins that are vulnerable to degradation, loose RNA that's very vulnerable to degradation, but perhaps it was due to these hidden packages that we weren't looking for, sort of like toys in these toy bubbles. As I discussed in last week's lecture, you need to crack open the toy bubble to see what's in them, and no one was even doing that until 2008. We see on the histograms that there's been a tenfold increase in the number of studies since the last 12 years. All right, so how did I become interested in exosomes? Well, in 2016, I had become the acquaintance of a gentleman who wanted to become, let's say, interested in anti-aging. And so he asked me to go to A4M and scout out what were the more interesting people. And the only ones that I thought were interesting at the time were CVD and also ALCAT, which is the testing of your blood for degranulation or immune reactivity. And then finally, this company that was making a exosome product from stem cells for skin rejuvenation. So I got to know this gentleman, and together over the next year and a half, we had monthly meetings, and we developed some things with a UCI professor and his postdoc. And I began to learn more about exosomes, and in that process, we're trying to plot out a way to develop a company. As luck would have it, in 2018, December, I went to a lecture at the American Academy of Anti-Aging Medicine. And this gentleman to my left, Sheldon Jordan, talked about his motorcycle accident 4 weeks prior. And his healing was so remarkable. I said, well, this guy is either lying or he's onto something really big. What happened? He had broken his ribs, his ankle, lost a third of his blood in a horrific accident. And he snuck 5 vials or 25 billion exosomes into his IV, as he had been working with the Chimera company at that time. And the upshot was he looked terrific. He healed super fast. There was no x-ray evidence of ankle fracture. And I thought, well, this is something I should try. I know about it, but let's see if it really works. That night, I happened to meet Duncan Ross, the founder and scientist of Chimera. And we had dinner, and I got to know him personally, and I was impressed with his knowledge. So that was kind of the seeds of what would grow into a more interesting practice over the last almost 3 years. So the first thing I did, as any good chef would, I tried it on myself. So I injected my right meniscus. My meniscus had been torn about 10 years prior. It really, I avoided surgery by taking the TA65 and the recharge, but it would still click and occasionally ache. So I did that in my knee, and the clicking and the aching have gone away since. I also did my rotator cuff. I couldn't sleep on my right side because of pain. So I injected from the front the subscapularis muscle, and that is good now. I can do rowing and swimming and sleep on my side, so that's good. And I also did my right Achilles tendon, which has required at least one more retreatment, but still good, no pain, no limitation. So happy with that. I also did nasal treatment, and that seemed to make my memory better and give me the ability to voluntarily piloerect, which was interesting and which persists. I started doing it on my mom, and she felt wonderful. She said, I look younger, I feel younger, and she's had 19 treatments. Her 20th will be tonight. So I decided, well, if I'm going to offer this, I need to offer it in different places. And it's been a while since med school anatomy. So I went to a 2-day course in Austin by the National Procedures Institute. Here are some of the areas of injection listed that we went over. And so we did a clinical anatomy review and ultrasound guide review, just as a way of introduction. I think it's important to realize that a lot of doctors don't feel comfortable doing these procedures. And even myself, I've done, dozens of them. I have to review the anatomy before, so I know what to avoid, where to go, what the variation is. And, we don't always use ultrasound, but there are certain areas where we do. The hip, very important to know where you're going. Some of these other procedures, it just adds difficulty and therefore risk, and that's something patients don't really understand. They think more is more, but it's not. So I started to treat patients, close friends, and then the experiences were positive, and I continued on. I realized there was a big deficit in knowledge, and so I wanted to organize it into these, 30-minute lectures. So this is me and my 2 sons in 2019. This is the Waialae Canyon, the Grand Canyon of Kauai. Beautiful. Anyway, they thought I wasn't really up to the hike, so they left me back at the hotel. During that time, I recorded all 9 lectures. The first was, what are exosomes? And you can reference these by going to tinyurl.com. That's where all my short links are, /exosomes1. Second lecture is exosomes 2, and that's what is aging. The third is parabiosis, which is the sewing together of a young and old animal to illustrate in sort of a sub rosa way that the aging condition itself is bad exosomes, if you will. So it's kind of like a chicken and egg thing. Number 4 is cancer. Number 5 is the history of regenerative joint therapies. And I think this is a good one for people who are always asking me, Doc, what's the difference between this and stem cells and PRP? Well, this kind of runs through it and gives you an idea. Number 6 is are all exosomes equal? I think a better treatment of this would be webinar 24, I think it is, comparing exosomes, where we actually do some of the molecular biology data and we drill down with the chief scientists of Kymera. But that's an introduction. And number 7 is the FDA. Will this ever be FDA approved? What does that mean? Number 8 are risks. And number 9 is, what is my approach to clinical use of exosomes? So in October of 2019, my son said, hey, I'm nominated for this award at the Honolulu Film Festival. I said, that's great. I need a reason to come out there. So I decided to talk to my friend Akimi, and we planned Royal Hawaiian lectures. So we marshaled friends of friends of friends and managed to get about 70 people out there to the ballroom at the Royal Hawaiian. And it was really fun. I met a bunch of new friends and some patients. And that's a picture of us, me, Mom, and Oliver, who was a junior at the time at Iolani School. And we did a little tour of the island, and it was a very interesting and fun time. If you want to watch that video, go to exoblog16 at tinyurl. About 3 months later, I returned to Hawaii by popular demand. A lot of the patients had good results, not all of them, as I discuss in my, I think it's the lecture 26 or 7, unhappy patients. But some of the patients were kind enough to volunteer to give testimonials. The audio visual is not that great, but I think it's worth a view. And that you can find that at Exoblog 30. There's a picture from that University of Hawaii lecture, me in the middle, below a patient, 90 years old. And then Akimi, my good friend, who's 60 now, and my mom is 84, and I think we're looking pretty good there for our ages. So this is one of the 2 slides I want you to screenshot for your reference. So if you want to pause, you would Command-Shift-3, click and drag, and it'll be on your desktop. If you're on Windows, it would be Windows-Shift-S, and then click and drag and save it to an open file by Control-V or paste, or right-click paste. So here are 39 blogs that I did over the years, some of the highlights. Oh, and you can reference this by going to tinyurl.com/exoblog1 or 2, 3, 4, etc. Number 3 is traumatic brain injury. Number 7 is nerve pain. Number 12 is my friend, the 82-year-old runner now, seborrheic dermatitis, stasis dermatitis. Number 23, soft signs of exosome use, very interesting one. Varicose veins, 28, menopause reversal, 33, and delayed reactions, 39. So if you look down and screen save, you can see that there are some very interesting blogs there. Seborrheic dermatitis, chakras, whether exosomes are smart, do they go where they're supposed to, and if so, how? And double vision, cold hands, tinnitus, bunch of interesting content there for you. As fate would have it, my good friend Akimi helped me to move to Hawaii. I moved to Hawaii because my son, who had been a boarder at Iolani for sophomore, junior year, wanted to avoid the curfew and hang out more with his friends. I could also save on tuition as a day student, so I said, well, why not? And I uprooted my life and moved to Hawaii. When I got there, you know, it turns out that the COVID thing had kind of dampened people's enthusiasm to even leave the house. I think Hawaii was probably the most paranoid place I've ever lived as far as coronavirus goes. And so I really had not much to do. And my friend Akimi said, well, why don't you do live webinars? I said, hey, that's a great idea. So I started doing live webinars, and they were 24 in number in Hawaii, and they ranged from topics such as what are exosomes, back pain, shoulders, knees, gout, the hips, tendons, menopause, leaky gut, stasis, dermatitis, nerve generation, stroke rehab, dental problems, erectile dysfunction, acne, tinnitus, face blindness, vision, hair loss, autoimmunity, aging, what are stem cells, MSCs, comparing exosomes, that's 24. And since I've returned to LA now in August, I've done repeat injections, best cases, unhappy patients, and the science of exosomes. So it was a fun year in Hawaii. That's my son graduating from his school, one of the only schools to stay open in the country. And I was blessed that my older son, who's at Cornell, also had one of the only open colleges. So they were spared some of the shutdowns. So again, if you want to pause and screenshot, it would be Windows Shift S or Command Shift 3 on a Mac. And you can reference those in the future. The way you find them is tinyurl.com, exoweb, and then a number where X is 1 through 28 for future reference. All right. Lastly, I've been expanding the practice now. I got licensed in New York and Florida in 2021. I'm perhaps applying to a couple more states. We'll see. I do house calls. We also have used day facilities in medical buildings. And we make frequent trips to San Francisco, Hawaii, New York City, and Miami. I carry with me basic resuscitation materials such as smelling salts, epinephrine, dexamethasone, which is steroid, Benadryl, which is anti-allergic, and albuterol for wheezing, pulse oximeter, and an angiocath to establish access if needed. If you want to get included on a future excursion, please email me at drpark@rechargebiomedical.com. And as my educational resources grow, you can find them on my server at rechargebiomedical.com/exosome_shortlinks.xlsx. That's an Excel file. So in the future, a year or two, however many years in the future, if you want to see what I'm up to, just go there and download the most recent short links file. And that's about it. So I didn't want to belabor it, but I think I'm so grateful to Akimi. You know, she really has supported me and helped me as a realtor to find a place to live and introduced me to some wonderful folks. And as a result, we've been able to grow the clinical experience. You know, medicine is really just practicing. That's why a lot of doctors just really want to do IV because it's hard enough for them to get an IV. And, you know, these procedures, I come from a surgical background as an OBGYN. So, you know, I don't have that anxiety about doing procedures, but you still have to respect it. And you have to realize that anatomy varies and you have to know before you do every patient, you have to review. So there is a technical skill involved here. It's important to choose wisely. And I think it's important also to realize that, you know, you may not have any of these problems that I mentioned in the blogs or in the webinars, but in your life, there are many people who do. And although you may not need the help, most of these lectures are not salesy. They're just ways to explain, because a lot of times people on their own research, they don't really get a clear understanding of what the problem is. So if you watch these videos, you might get a better education. You might be able to help somebody in your life. And you never really know how your engagement and your kindness is helping other people. I mean, it's so important that I have trust with a patient. It's so important that they know I'm telling them the truth, but I cannot guarantee this, that, or the other. I'm just doing the best I can. And so if anyone in your life needs help, have them take a look at the resources, and then we can start a dialogue and hopefully help them out in some way. So that's the end of the lecture. Pretty quick one today. Today's was In Case You Missed It. In case you missed it, now you can go back and screenshot and save them. And in case you missed it in the future, just download from my server the exosome short links as shown at the bottom. So I think I'll open up to questions. If any of the attendees have questions, please let me know. You can raise your hand to be unmuted, or you can type it into Alan K. Sure, here you go.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
I had this treatment yesterday, like you and I spoke about. Unfortunately, his exosomes didn't arrive in time, and he only gave me these two different amniotic type material.
Yeah.
One of them was supposed to be stem cells, and one was just not. One was supposedly live stem cells, and one wasn't. My question is, I'll see how I feel for a couple months after this, and then get exosomes, or should I get exosomes soon on top of this?
Right. So Alan is a gentleman who contacted me over the weekend. He was going to get exosomes on Monday. I mean, I'm a little confused. If they didn't come in on Monday, why didn't you just go back later when they arrived?
The doctor unfortunately couldn't see me for 2 weeks. He's going on a vacation, and he's one of those guys that sees 20 patients a day. So rather than wait 2 weeks, I've got a event that I want to be healthy for, a golf tournament for my daughter's school.
I hear you. I hear you. Well, what can I tell you? You know?
Well, I guess, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, Alan is very kind. He said, "Oh, I've watched your videos and your emails and your blogs," and I said, "That's great." And you know, he was going to get exosomes with, I think, fibrin or some kind of placental matrix and some other stuff. But I think the exosomes are important. Did he substitute off-the-shelf stem cells then, or?
Yeah, he had somebody had in his freezer the 100 minus 80 degrees, but this other one was a product that's in a dry form that you mix with saline.
Yeah, lyophilized. Yeah, there's a couple of product companies. If you want to learn more, go to Comparing Exosomes lecture. Yeah, I mean, hopefully it'll work. You know, like I talked about in Foundational Lecture 5, you know, everything works. It's just I don't personally have experience or like PRP because of the inflammatory nature of it. But, you know, this idea out there that you have to have a matrix, that could be true. I mean, I talked to a gentleman who said you have to inject it into the subchondral bone. That could be true. But, you know, my current practice is evolving to the point where I don't even use hyaluronic acid. We've had some mixed to untoward reactions. So, you know, I prefer things that have a wide index of safety, and that's basically my thing. I mean, you should have flown out from Houston to see me, Alan.
Absolutely. I wish I would have. Now, I'm highly disappointed when I got there and they didn't.
Well, you never know. It might work. It might work great. I mean, off-the-shelf stem cells with matrix could be great. But yeah, I certainly have never seen 20 patients in a day, and that's good that he's doing gangbusters. But you know,
he's not all. Those aren't all stem cells. Those are a whole litany of things.
Sure, sure. I mean, it's great. You know, good that he's experienced. Probably that translates into safety. You know, my thing is more like personal. I try and do like get to know the person individually, their whole medical history, like, and it's always a collaboration. Like I had a patient scheduled yesterday, and she reminded me. She goes, "Oh, should I take the antibiotics before we do the treatment?" I said, "Oh, wait, you have Lyme disease." And so we dug deeply. We circled back. We said, "Oh my God, you know, perhaps the recent flare is just Lyme." So I prescribed her medication over the phone, and she's feeling better. So her massive joint problems are probably due to Lyme. And although she feels better from the exosomes, you know, if we didn't have that open communication, you know, we could have suppressed her immune system and made her flare worse. So I think it's important to consider the entire medical history of a person. And a lot of times doctors are so pressed for time that they sometimes forget. So I think it's important to have that whole range of knowledge for better collaboration. I think my patients are a little annoyed. I text them too much. I'm always asking them, "Hey, how you doing? How you feeling today?" And I think they think, does this guy have a life? But it's important to get some good feedback.
I'm sure they appreciate that personal touch.
All right, Mr. King. So you're such a great dad. I know you were driving to your daughter's birthday. Now you're going to a golf tournament. I love it. Love to hear it. All right. So good luck with your knees. Let me know if I can help you in any way. And fingers crossed, perhaps it'll get better.
Can I ask another question?
Yes, sir.
So the pain I'm feeling the day after is kind of like that COVID shot pain where there's a lot of inflammation, I guess, around the injections.
Yeah.
Is that typical of exosomes as well as the stem cells I got?
That's a great question. No, actually, Because the exosomes shut down inflammation, again, that's why I don't like this PRP stuff, because that causes inflammation. Prolotherapy causes inflammation. So the exosomes shut that down, actually. When you do microneedling, typically people look horrible for days because of the inflammation. But the exosomes are so anti-inflammatory that the people I've seen the next day, they just look like they have a slight sunburn. So if you had done the exosomes, you probably would be pain-free now. However, about 50% people get a pain flare maybe 4 to 10 days out, just maybe 6 hours or 12 hours of pretty severe pain. I don't know what that is. That's about 50% of the time, but then it goes away and then they're fine. So there is some remodeling that takes a toll, but typically right after the procedure, people have little to no pain. Days later, they might have a brief flare of something as the remodeling takes place.
Thank you for that. I'm fingers crossed this works, but I'm gonna probably get some exosomes at some point. Maybe I'll come see you.
No, hopefully not. Hopefully you won't need it. You know, you never know. It just, the road is a little rockier, and I hate hearing patients have pain, but it's pretty much, predictable 100% of the time. If you take something that is prolotherapy based, including the PRP, it's going to hurt for the next 2-3 days. In fact, they tell you can't take ibuprofen or aspirin or anything to cause anti-inflammation, because part of the mechanism is inflammation. So I think that with exosomes, we have less of a Faustian bargain. We don't need to go 3 steps back to go 4 steps forward. We just start going forward. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I'm confused. I didn't get PRP, like where they spin my own blood.
No, I know, but you got the amniotic fluid matrix, right? Or something.
Right.
Yeah, and then the lyophilized stem cell extract. So that still can present something of a foreign body type of reaction. So that would be what I'm talking about in terms of.
Got it.
Yeah.
Thanks for explaining that.
Major histocompatibility, yeah. And they used to put like dextrose, like sugar, to cause inflammation, but I think that's a little more of the medieval barbaric technique. I think that's falling by the wayside now. And PRP is platelet-rich plasma, so although it causes inflammation, it also has growth factors and platelet exosomes in it. But again, the universal kind of report is that it hurts a lot, and they rely on that inflammation. So, any other questions? Thank you so much, Alan. Anybody want to raise their hand or ask a question? John, Mark. Oh, Alan wants to ask something else. Okay, here we go.
Sorry. I was typing a chat. I don't want to monopolize the time.
No, go ahead.
I've been, like I mentioned, I've researched this for probably 6 or 8 months. I've seen 7 doctors here in the Houston area, and all of them do different forms of stem cells or exosomes or PRPs. One of the questions, I have a lot of questions. One of my questions is, you mentioned this doctor was doing 5 cc's. I guess that's equivalent to 5 billion. I don't know in the stem cell world, but in the exosome world, I guess that's equivalent to 5 billion. And you had mentioned, hey, you might do, since I have 3 areas, knee, hip, and lower back, maybe more than 5 cc's. So if I do go the exosome route, does that still make sense to do more? I mean, in the range of 10 billion for 3 different areas?
I understand your question. Basically, exosomes are just like tequila. You can mix them in however many ounces of water you want. So they use normal saline to dilute them. So if you want it 80 proof, it's just like, 5 billion per cc. They have also a popular version, which is triple strength. So that would be 3 billion per cc. So when you say 5 cc, that could have been 5, or it could have been 15 billion. At the price you were paying, probably it was 15 billion. I don't know. So now if you go through that webinar 24, I think, comparing exosomes, Dr. Ross wants to talk about Ross units, which is talking about potency as opposed to particles. Because as you see, if you turn up the resolution on the assayer, you can read any number of particles you want. So the question is, what is the activity? So if you want to do a deeper dive, you can learn about it there. But typically, the street price is 500, 600, 700 per billion. But when you talk about comparing other brands, all bets are off. I have not experienced other brands. I've heard mixed results from bad to good, and I just don't feel like I want to risk it. If I know something is working, why risk it?
Great. I'm gonna, we're ordering Chimera
Yeah.
exosomes.
Yeah, but 5cc, what I just tried to explain was that there's single strength and triple strength. So if it comes in a blue bottle, it's triple strength. If it comes in a purple bottle, it's single strength. So that could have been 5 billion, or it could have been 3x or 15 billion.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
You got it. John Wenger asks, is there a sleep improvement? That's a great question. I did inject a gentleman 2 weeks ago with quite a bit of exosomes. He said his sleep is better. Sleep is very multifactorial. It just depends a lot. Initially, he was having trouble sleeping. Now he's sleeping better. I would say as a general rule, I don't think it makes much difference one way or the other. The supplements that I make and take are better for sleep, but I wouldn't say I've seen a lot of direct changes in sleep, no. Appetite, libido, hormones, even diabetic control through the pancreas and liver, I've seen changes there. Certainly circulation, heart rate variability. But sleep is very multifactorial and complex, and I have not seen a lot of changes there. Good question. Any other questions? John asks, what supplement? For the last 14 years, I've been taking a supplement based on astragalus called TA65, and then I make my own sort of similar version called Recharge. I make it here in Orange County, California, and most people report more restful sleep. They can have brief awakenings, but the dreaming is more vivid, and they wake up more refreshed. And that's something that quite a few dozen people regularly order and like as part of their lifestyle. Stage 4 quantified. Oh, I'm sorry. I think that's jargon. What John is asking is, there are different stages of sleep architecture. There's 1, 2, which are slow wave sleep, delta sleep, and then 3, 4, it's REM sleep, where you do the dreaming. Yeah, they have ways to measure your sleep, which is inferred by your breathing and movement patterns. But yeah, I think that the sleep becomes more efficient. The brief awakenings become more efficient, and the quality of the REM is quite different. People say, well, I remember Suzanne Summers was telling me she felt like the dreams she was having were so real, she couldn't discern in her life whether they happened during a dream or during real life. So the dreaming can be quite vivid, indicating that the mind is more active, and that healing, that procedural REM sleep in stage 4 is more effective. And John adds that REM sleep is decreased in the old. That's true. They used to teach us the dogma that old people need less sleep. I think it could just be that old people have sleep dysfunction and they sleep less. It's not that they need less, they just get less, and that could be accelerating Alzheimer's as well. There's a very strong correlation between sleep deprivation and sleep dysfunction and Alzheimer's, and the mechanism, of course, is the lymphatic pathway. If you want to learn more about that, pick up my book, The Telomere Miracle, where I discuss a little bit about that. As you sleep, your brain is supposed to swell and flush out the garbage. And if you don't sleep and you don't have that time, the brain accumulates garbage, and it may be contributing towards Alzheimer's. All right, great questions. Thanks everybody for attending. Next week I have to decide if or what we'll be discussing. There's always something to discuss, but I want to thank you for joining. And again, if you know anybody that has any of these problems listed, feel free to have them take a look. And if they have questions, I'm always happy to answer questions. Just as Alan was able to avail himself of a lot of knowledge on the website. The primary mission here is just to spread the knowledge. There's so many people I could treat, I'm not treating, and that's fine. There's plenty of patients for everyone. I'm just trying to spread the word as quickly as I can so that doctors can help patients wherever they may reside. Okay, everybody, thanks a lot, Dr. Ed Park, completing a webinar, and I'll see you next time. Appreciate it.